to UF St. Lucie Extension. Today we're going to talk a little bit about some of the wonderful fruits we can grow, because summer is one of those times when we want to enjoy the fruits of our labor. So we're going to talk a little bit about in this session how to grow some of those fruits and what are the things that are involved with getting those fruits so that we know all the labor we're putting into them is going to give us those luscious fruits that we really want to have. So one of the things we're going to talk about today is all of those different fruits that are out there, as well as how to manage them. And what I have with me today is Parker Platts from the University of Florida, and he is our UF IFAS Extension Agent, and he's a multi-county Extension Agent. So welcome, Parker.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Tell me, you know, in your title, UF IFAS multi-county Extension Agent, I think it's a fruit crops agent, correct?
Right.
And so tell me a little bit about the multi-county fruit crops agent. What does that mean?
Well, multi-county means I work for not only St. Lucie County, but also Indian River County and some in Martin and Okeechobee. And as an extension agent, we're charged with taking research that comes out of the universities and dispensing that information to growers and homeowners. So, for example, say a researcher has a new control for Kogan grass, which is bad for ranchers. It wouldn't be efficient for me or for that researcher to go county to county and show people this new research, so they depend on the extension agent to either do a field day or a class to disseminate this information to the growers.
Oh, very good. So you work basically with the commercial entities for fruit crops like citrus and other types of fruits and things?
Right,
Okay.
mainly citrus, and also homeowners.
Okay, okay, so that's good because we have a lot of homeowners that have different fruits and different citrus, you know, and of course they have lots of questions and problems.
Right.
And as the growers do, you know,
Right.
We'll talk about that. But I mean, when they're looking for information, like I guess a good one to start with is irrigation. We've had so much rain, you know, is it necessary for fruit trees, citrus, or any other fruit tree to have supplemental irrigation?
Yeah, absolutely, because during the winter and especially in the spring in Florida, we get very little rain. And if you don't have irrigation, a lot of times your plants will die.
Okay.
And so you need to be aware of that and know that the signs that the plant shows that it needs a little water.
And is that like a little tink kind of thing, or?
Well, one of the worst things you can do is overwater.
Uh-huh.
So
which we can do that sometimes.
Yeah, we can. So with most plants, say during the dry season, maybe every third day, give it some water enough that you know the ground is wet around it, and then let it deplete for like 3 days and then give it some more.
Okay, well that's kind of a good, and of course that depends on your soil, right?
Right.
Because some soils hold water better than others. I've noticed that when I go on a walk with my dog, that some of the soils are really, really still wet, and some of them have dried out already. And of course I always tell people to use their moisture meter, which is that little finger right there to see how the soil is. But you know, some of our trees obviously have much deeper roots than your finger can go down to. So
right.
You know, it's important to know that. So an irrigation system, and would that be like I've seen them before. They're like bubblers that you can put on the tree. You know, specifically, there's like a line that goes down, and then that tree gets irrigation just meant for that tree, and not the whole area, like the lawn or something of that nature.
Right. You can get pretty technical with timers that go on and off at certain times for certain durations, or you can just plan on watering them with a hose,
Mm-hmm.
or just turning on and off a little dripper or microjet sprinkler that will water it. But like you said, you need to know what kind of soil you have, because sandier soils it will go through a lot faster
really
than a clay-like type soil.
Yeah, so that's important to know.
Yeah.
And you can do little tests, right, to see how well your soil drains, you know, especially before you even plant a tree.
Right.
It's good to do that.
Right.
So you know what kind of soil you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I know that a lot of people, with all this rain, not only do we have no need pretty much for irrigation, but we also have yellowing in some of the plants and some different colors that I see out there that sometimes they make you think maybe there's something wrong, like a disease or something like that, where it could be maybe the nutrients aren't there anymore for the plant. So how often should we be fertilizing fruit trees?
Well, when they're younger, more often than when they're older, because they have more roots that can take up more fertilizer. But when they're young, at least 6 to 8 times a year, just small doses. And once they get larger, you can back that down to 3 or 4 times a year.
Okay. So, and then larger, several years, depending, is there like a girth or anything on it that tells us when it's larger or able to do it?
Well,
A more mature tree?
yeah. When you start out 6 to 8 times, and then maybe the next year 5 to 7 times, and as they get bigger, you're going to kind of be able to judge the tree and see as it turns yellow or you didn't
starts
do
to
it when
show
you needed.
shows you signs of nutrition. Yeah.
But when they get bigger, they have a lot more roots, can reach out there to more fertilizer, and of course you have to apply a larger amount also.
Yeah. And now when we apply our fertilizer, where should we be doing that? Are we putting it like I see people sometimes they put it right at the base of the tree, and that's it.
That's not good. And if you get it right on the base of the tree on a young tree, sometimes it'll kill the tree because the salt burn will hurt will hurt the trunk. But a good judge is whatever the top of the tree, whatever area it covers, is about the area the roots will cover. So if
if the tree goes out,
then the roots are probably as big around as the top of the tree.
Okay. All right. So that's good. And is there a better fertilizer to use for fruit trees? I know there's some that say fruit trees on them. Should there be certain things that people look for information? We always tell people to turn the bag over, look at what's inside, because they have the 3 numbers on the front.
Right.
Which is the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium.
Right.
But what other things should they have in there as well?
Well, those are called the major elements, and those are very important. But you also want a fertilizer with minor elements, which is zinc, manganese, iron, boron, those type of things, because those trees also need the minor elements to keep them in balance and to keep some of your yellowing from showing up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I guess they don't need to be as much of those. That's why they're called micronutrients, I guess.
Right.
All right, and so when you turn it over, you should look for that. And there's, of course, in the summertime, in many of the counties along the coast, on the East Coast and the West Coast, there's a blackout period for fertilization. Does that mean we can't fertilize our fruit trees?
No, that blackout period is mainly for lawns and landscaping, but you're allowed to apply fertilizer to your fruit trees and vegetables, but you aren't allowed to apply phosphorus unless you have a soil sample that denotes that the soil needs that. And phosphorus, you usually, even in most fertilizers, it's a very small number compared to the nitrogen and potassium.
Okay, so they can fertilize now, but they just have in the summertime, but they got to make sure there's 0 phosphorus unless they have a soil test that tells them differently.
That's correct.
Okay, that they need it apparently.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. So now if we have different types of fruit trees out there, I know that most trees need to have pruning done to them, and I know you're familiar with citrus, so a lot of questions that come in from homeowners that we get are, should I be pruning my citrus tree like I see the groves do, which is kind of a kind of box shape, I would say, right?
Right. Right.
And I know there's probably reasons for that.
Right.
But is that what homeowners should be doing?
Well, the homeowner has the ability to keep that tree the size that it wants it to be. So if you only want it to cover a certain area, don't let it go beyond that, and try to prune the tree during the dormant period during the winter normally for most trees. But that's the thing that the homeowner, and also when they buy the tree, they need to know what kind of space they have, because they don't want to buy a certain type of fruit tree that's going to overtake their small yard.
Yeah, some of those tropical fruits get really big.
Avocados and mangoes especially, they get huge.
Yeah.
But I think if you start before it gets oversized and pruned from that point, instead of waiting till it gets oversized and really pruning hard, you'd be better off.
Okay. But they don't have to make them boxed.
No.
Okay.
No, they don't. The main thing is to get sunlight in the tree so then they produce fruit.
Okay. All right. And of course, there's information out there on the website from university that talks about pruning, so they can go to those sites, or they can call you to find out more. All right. So they have an area in mind. They want a fruit tree. They've decided what kind of fruit tree should they be looking for. I mean, how should they look for a fruit tree? What are some of the guidelines if they want to go and shop for fruit trees? Where should they shop? What are there places that sell fruit trees everywhere? What kind of fruit tree should they be looking for? Yeah,
some are hard to find, like at your big box stores, and you have to go to a more specialized type of nursery. But it all depends on what you want, and there's plenty of research online that you can look up nurseries and the type of plants they have, and Yeah, there are avenues to go, and also a good idea is to look at your neighbors' yards, and see how different fruits are doing around the neighborhood, and which ones are prolific and which ones aren't, because
Yeah.
they probably have close to the same type of soil that you have.
That's true. That's true. And I guess you should probably pick a fruit tree that you like the fruit from.
Oh,
That would
absolutely.
be kind of like vegetables, Wow, look at all these zucchini I got. Oh, that's right, I don't like zucchini.
Right.
Yeah, so
Exactly.
yeah, a very good point to bring out for that too. All right, so when we're going to get a tree, is there anything, say I want to plant a avocado. Now, I'm sure there's some things that are considered really tropical fruits, and then there's some that are more subtropical, and then citrus is considered subtropical, is it not?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's always a chance that we could get a freeze and it might damage some of our fruit trees. Is there some way though that when we go to shop for, like, say, an avocado, what should we be looking for?
Well, there's a lot of different varieties of avocados, so you can do your research again through the university website to see which ones might be better for
Or
further
which ones you
north.
like the flavor of?
That's true too, and with all fruits, and peaches is a new upcoming commercial crop in Florida, and they've developed some peaches that have lower chilling requirements to bloom and provide peaches, and there's some really tasty varieties of peaches.
I've had the Florida peaches. They're really good, and they come on before Georgia.
Yeah, that's correct.
They're a little smaller, but they're
they
still
are
tasty.
smaller,
Yeah.
very tasty though.
they're very
So yes, pick a fruit that you like, and then do a little research to see. We aren't considered tropical like the fruits down in Miami, but we can grow a lot of things they do. But we do have to watch out for the cold nights. So there might be a variety that takes cold
Or maybe
more
a place
than
in
another.
the landscape that you might be able to put it that might be a little more protected.
Right.
Like maybe a
if
southern
you,
exposure or something.
Or you can trim it and keep it small that you might be able to throw some sheets over it during the frost too.
So protection, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good idea. Now, I've heard different things about fruits that, like we get calls about, like, I got an avocado seed. Can I grow my avocado from the seed? I've got my orange seed. Can I grow my orange tree from my seed?
Right.
Can you do that?
You can with most varieties, but most varieties like to be budded onto a rootstock that helps the tree to impart things that you want the tree to do, so you really wanted a budded tree for.
And is that like the grafting? Is that what that means? Okay.
Yes.
So you want to kind of get and my understanding of grafting is you get a rootstock that's strong and healthy for the area that you live in.
Right.
And then the fruit that you liked, like say you had a certain type of avocado or a certain type of other fruit, and you wanted that one, so you grafted onto that rootstock. Is that what you mean by budding?
Yes,
Okay.
and like you would take a rootstock that's good for your soil and your situation, and then have the variety budded on top of that. And when you go to buy a tree, a lot of times you don't know, but you want to look for something that's been budded and wasn't grown from seed, because a lot of time they won't fruit, or they'll take a long time to fruit, where a budded tree will fruit fairly readily.
And when we look at that tree, does it look different? I mean, is there an area on the tree trunk or wherever that budding happened that's going to show us that's a little bit different looking?
Yes, you can usually see either a line, or where the rootstock is a little bigger than the top, or vice versa. And if you
kind of like a
can't,
little bulge, like?
right, and if
Okay.
you can't see that, then ask the nurseryman, is this tree budded or grown
Yeah.
from seed? Because you should know that.
Well, I know, and we've had a lot of homeowners that have called us and they said, my avocado, I don't have any avocados. And I said, well, how long has your tree been in the ground? They said, well, it's like 6 years already. And I said, well, maybe another 4 before you get your avocados. And I understand, too, sometimes, like, if you had a Hass avocado and you planted a seed, that doesn't necessarily mean you'll have a Hass avocado that's produced later.
Right.
So I think that's another reason for that budding or grafting, as we were talking about.
Mhm.
That's a good point. That's very good. Well, when we're talking about some of the other things is, of course, the summer, not only does it bring luscious fruits for us to eat, and brings lots of moisture and other things, but it also brings lots of little pesties.
Right.
So, we do have, and diseases, and I know the citrus growers are dealing with a really hard disease that they're having a difficulty finding an easy solution for. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that and what maybe we should be on the lookout for.
Right. It's a tough time for citrus growers right now. The disease is called Wang Long Bing, which is, they say greening. And it really deteriorates the health of the tree. It kind of stops up the plumbing of the tree.
Okay.
And the disease is transmitted by a small insect called a psyllid, and we haven't found a way to control the psyllid. 10 years ago, we didn't have the psyllid, and it came in from another country. And
like so many things.
Yeah, and they like the Florida moisture and heat, and it's a real devastating disease. And for the homeowner, if you like citrus, just plan on spending a lot of time looking for insects, and we haven't found a cure. If you pour the nutrients and keep the tree in the best shape you can, other than having the disease, you can get by, but it's not the way it used to be.
Keep your plant healthy.
Yes.
And
yes.
that's probably true for all fruit trees.
Right, right.
The best thing, and the same thing with everything I've ever heard of, like, keep your grass healthy, you won't get weeds, you keep other things, and it's because plants have their own natural defenses, so if we keep them healthy, they have a better chance of doing that.
Sure.
And you mentioned going out and checking, so that's kind of like we talk about scouting.
Right. Scouting is very important because if you're going to plant a fruit tree, just figure you're going to be a farmer. It's not always easy. You need to be out there, especially during the warm months and when your tree is flushing, because that's a lot of times the insects like that tender flush.
What's the flushing mean?
Well, that means new growth. It's usually lighter in color, and as you see,
and tastier apparently.
Yeah, for the insects it is. But you need to scout and see what the insects are, and we can be helpful in telling you what the insects are. If it's a lot of insects are beneficial, so you may see something that's not going to harm your tree.
Right.
But just be ready for those.
So you don't want to just because you see an insect spray something.
Exactly.
You want to make sure you identify it first.
Right. Right.
Okay. Or now, what if it's a disease like you said the Hong Long Bing? I think I got that right.
Right.
Is a disease. So when they get that disease or something else, what would they try to do with that? Identify that first, like they would an insect.
Exactly. And then you have to make a decision. You may, if the tree deteriorates, but you still like the few fruit that you get off of it, you may decide to keep it or prune it back. There aren't a lot of things we can do for that disease, like we have been others. But some people have decided to take them out, and some people nurse them along. So it's kind of your decision.
I see. And so, but if you nurse it along and keep it, and you've got a citrus tree and it's got greening, and your neighbor puts one in, it's probably going to go there too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So that's just something to keep in mind,
yeah.
I guess, for people that have a good relationship with their neighbor. Maybe they want to keep it that way. That's kind of
that's true.
Yeah. Now, with the citrus greening and some of the things that they're doing, are there new varieties that they're looking at for citrus? I know in the past when there's been a problem, whether it was tristasia or other situations, they've looked at new varieties of citrus that might, maybe be more resistant to the greening disease is what they have to be resistant to.
Right, and they are looking there. They're actually looking in the groves that are present now, and if the grower sees a tree that's really healthy among all these unhealthy trees, we call one of the researchers, and they will take some material from that tree and see if it does have a natural resistance to greening, because if we come up with something like that, or a variety that does better in a greening environment, that would be great for the industry. It's a long-term.
Sure it is. Yeah, because you're taking a little bit, and then you've got to grow another tree from that little bit, right?
And then if it works, you've got to grow millions of them for all the growers in Florida.
Yeah, you start them all from little pieces.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's a very long. Well, most research is long. It's not like a real quick fix. So,
right.
Yeah, and that's of course, unfortunately, our society likes quick fixes. It likes quick answers, like solutions, and things of that nature. So, in short term, the best thing is to keep it healthy and to be watching it on at least a weekly basis, scouting your landscape, your fruit trees, your garden, whatever you've got.
Oh, yeah.
And then maybe making notes of what you see, because some things, like you said, may not be harmful. And and of course, they could always bring them into the extension office. Or, a lot of people have those cell phones, so they can take pictures of their trees. We've had those emailed to us as well.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
Yeah, as long as it's a good picture that we can actually see something on, we can call back and ask questions or email back and ask questions. I've had insects sent to me that way by
Right.
pictures, so it's easier to say from some of those. So that's a helpful thing. What else about fruit trees? Now, if we want to put a fruit tree in is there a better spot to put it? We talked a little bit about temperature in putting it. Do they like shade? Is there any fruit trees that like shade, or do they all have to be in sun? And how much sun do they need?
Right. Most fruit trees like sun, and that's another reason for pruning them, other than getting the equipment through the grows. But we prune them to get to available sunlight in the middle of the tree. So you need to look over your yard and see where they can get sunlight. And most of your fruit trees don't like heavy, wet areas. So you want a sandy area of your yard, and you can always add water, but you can't get water out of that clay if it's damaging your roots. So you got to think about that also.
Okay. So if we have a sunny area, but it may not drain that well, can we put like some additional soil on it, but maybe not just in that one area, but maybe like an island or something, or a bigger area, and maybe raise it up so that it will drain, and then when waters come in, the waters are here, but the tree's up here. As
long as it's not going to erode away, and then you're going to have roots exposed. But I suggest whenever you plant a new plant and the soil's not the greatest, dig a hole a lot larger than the hole or the pot size, and then put the soil and soil amendments in there that tree would like.
To try to make it a little bit nicer.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then we talked a little bit about fertilizing. We talked about watering. We talked about pruning. And we talked about kind of like the right plant, right place. In other words, where in your yard should you be planting that tree? Is there anything that we've left out? And looking at fruit trees when you're putting them in, I mean, we want to pick a fruit tree that we like the fruit of, or that our neighbors like the fruit of, because usually you have lots of it.
Right.
So, and I guess maybe one of the thoughts is preserving. How do is it better to leave the fruit on the tree till you're ready to eat it, like, go out and pick your orange or something? Or is it better to harvest like you would vegetables, tomatoes, and then let them ripen? Do fruits ripen the same way tomatoes do?
Not all fruits, like citrus, doesn't ripen after you pick it. So whatever the internal quality of that fruit is, it'll be that. Now peaches is the other way around, and with the Florida peach varieties, they have a very narrow window. So you need to pick them, and you can always freeze them and can certain vegetables, but bananas ripen after you pick them. They will ripen, but citrus doesn't. And peaches, you don't want to let them go too far, because you're going to have a bunch of mush on the ground if you leave them too long.
You don't want to do that because they're too tasty.
Right,
yeah, Yeah. So that's good with that. So we now, in processing them, citrus, I see citrus cut up and sold. They've cleaned it and peeled it, and they sell it in containers and things of that nature. And of course, we have juice that we get. A lot of our citrus trees are used for juice.
Right.
I know we grow here on this part of Florida, we grow a lot of the fresh fruit, correct? Okay.
We're known for our grapefruit, but on the East Coast we have a lot of packing houses, and so we have a lot of fresh fruit. And one thing about citrus is it's not a narrow window. You can taste grapefruit and start picking them in October, November, and pick the tree on through April, May. So with most varieties of citrus, now navel's a little different. You have about a month and a half window, and some others, but some varieties you'll have a fairly large window. And they don't do real good canning. They just get the taste kind of changes when you try to do that with citrus.
Well, I know that some people have brought in navels into our office, and they've brought them in I guess, January, and the time for navels is, I think, September, October. So they bring them in January, and they're like, this is all dried up. What's wrong with my fruit?
Right.
And that's what you're saying, that the navels need to be picked sooner, and if they don't, that's what happens to them.
Yeah, and you'll learn that over time. And a lot of times your fruit tree, the first or second year crops don't taste as good as when they get older.
Oh,
They taste better once they're older.
Okay. That's a good point you bring up, because a lot of people have asked us, all right, I put my tree in there. It's only like a couple years old. They just got it, maybe 3 or 4 years old, and it's loaded with fruit. Is that okay? Because the tree's like really hanging down, especially if it's a grapefruit, because the fruit's so big.
Right.
So their question always is, should I take some of that fruit off? Is it going to hurt my tree?
Yeah, normally a tree that is overbearing, it's not good. The fruit won't get as big for one thing, but you may break limbs. So when it's young, you need to probably take a portion,
Be
maybe a
selective and
third.
take some of them off of there.
Yeah, maybe the smaller ones because yeah, it can hurt the tree, and it's
Okay.
just too much for that tree to bear.
Right, right. Yeah, that's and you want your tree to bear, but not too much.
Right, right.
Have to bear too much. Yeah, that's a good point. Well, it's so if we, I want to make sure I've got all these because I get all these questions in about fruit trees and stuff, and I want to make sure we've touched on all of them. And we've touched on the insects, we've touched on diseases, we've touched on many things. Now, if we have a disease, what do they bring it in or send us? It's harder for pictures of diseases because some of them have to be held for a period of time to see what type of disease they are. Is that
Right.
Yeah. So
Right.
you would bring that into our office, and then we would take a look at it, and then maybe culture it to see if it's fungal, which most of them are in nature. But they may be viral. It may be bacterial. Like,
Right.
I think the bacterial is the greening one, right? Is that not?
Right,
It's
right.
a bacterium.
Yeah, but you can bring samples to our office. A lot of times we can look at it and tell you, and sometimes you think it's one thing, it's another. It may be an insect damage like a leaf miner that's tearing up the leaves, but it's not a disease at all.
Oh, that's
But it
where they
looks-
go through with the little mines. Yeah,
Right,
we have a
and-
lot of that.
yeah,
Yeah. And
so-
they'll cause curling of the leaves.
Right, right, and it damages that new flush. They like that tender flush again.
Oh, again.
So just feel free to use our office as a resource, and we'll help you the best we can.
Okay, so they can just bring samples in, and when people bring samples, they should bring them in like an envelope, not in a plastic bag. And don't leave it sitting on the front of your dashboard for a couple days before you bring it in.
Right, because it'll change and it'll look like something else possibly.
Totally
That's-
something else.
That's
Yeah,
very
and if
true.
you put it in, some people mail things to us in a bag and a Ziploc, like
Right.
plastic bag, and we get it and it's some slime because of the moisture in there. So
Yep.
bringing it in. If you're going to bring it that same day you come in, that's fine. But if you're going to mail it or it's going to be a while, you want to make sure you put it in something paper-like. I believe. It'd be
Exactly.
better for us to take a look at. And if you have insects, don't put them on tape. Put them in alcohol or something of that nature so that we can actually see what they look like when they were pressed on tape. Like when they gather aphids or something off of their plants, some of the people don't want to touch them, so they'll use a piece of tape and then put it on the. Well, then it's hard to see what that aphid looks like because when you move the tape off, it tears the body up. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
So you want to make
that's
sure
true.
you're very careful there.
Right.
Well, thank you, Parker. I really appreciate all the time you've given us today, and I hope you guys have learned a lot of helpful advice and little secrets that we've shared with you about how to keep your fruits safe and healthy and make them enjoyable for you, and all that hard labor that you're putting into them, that you now are able to enjoy them better. And until next time, in our next adventure in Extension, we'll see you soon.